Call it to order. Now we will call the Finance and Personnel Committee to order. Today's date is Wednesday, September 7th. The time is 6:27 p.m. Notice has been duly posted at City Hall. And we'll proceed with the roll call. Alder Stevens, myself, I'm present. Alder Tom Smith.
Present.
Alder Stephen Knott.
Present.
Also, we have with us Finance Director Sabrina Steger, the City Administrator / City Attorney Amanda Jackson, Alders Wolf, Jurassic, and Stokes. In the audience, we have Parks, Dan Wick, Assistant Chief Tim Berg, Chief Troy Goody, Jared Holter, the City Public Works Director. You're not the City Engineer. That's Kevin. Katie Aspenson, there's a lot of people here tonight. The Plan Director, Clerk Joanne, and Lexi from HR.
And Sabrina. He said Sabrina.
Did
you say okay?
Oh, and her Honor Mayor Smith is joining us online. And Lieutenant Southworth from the Fire Department also joins us. All right, so moving on, consideration and action on minutes from the previous meeting.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes from the previous meeting, which I believe was August 3rd.
Second.
We have a motion by Alder Smith, seconded by Alder Knott to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Next, we will proceed to item 3, which is public input. Anybody wishes to address the Finance and Personnel Committee, you may do so by letting us know online or approaching the podium. We'll have 3 minutes to speak. Second call for public input. Third and final call for public input. Hearing no public input is now closed. On to finance, consideration and possible action on the following items. We'll go to item 4, the Scenic Mississippi Regional Transit System, or the Smart Bus presentation. Mr. Handy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. With me is Bob Golnick. Bob is with the Mississippi River Regional Planning Commission, and they assist us with the administration of the Smart Bus. I have a couple of items that I attached with the agenda, but I do have prints. Anybody wants a paper copy? I'll always take paper. Make notes. So Smart started about 2012. So we've got about 10 years in. I'm sorry. I'm a little too short, I think. So we have data from about 10 years of Smart. Unfortunately, for the route that goes through on Alaska, which is the green route, that started in 2019 or late 2018. So our data is not quite as profuse there. But what we were able to do is take a look at that data and compare it. And the annual data is pretty close, continues to be pretty close. But it's something that we can continue to review. So what we did, because we're running short on an annual basis with Smart, the way things are. It started out really good. We were at about a 70% funding ratio from the state and federal dollars for transit. And that has steadily tailed off. We're now at about 55%. When we started, we had a nice grant from the Bremer Foundation to start this bus service. We aren't started anymore, so we don't get that Bremer grant anymore. So we're in the process of trying to figure out long-term sustainability for the Smart Bus. So we have 3 revenue streams. The 55%, like I said, that comes from the grant. We have about 12% that comes from fare box revenue, which means what the riders pay, which is $3 one way for a fare. And then the rest comes from these local match dollars. And that's in that colorful spreadsheet that I had sent up. That spreadsheet shows we have 15 municipalities where we stop, and we have 4 counties where we have stops. And so what we did is we're taking a look at that long-term sustainability. We figured a number for 2025, what we need that local match to be at. And we, as a group, tried to figure out a way to use the statistics to analyze what each municipality roughly should be giving as far as local match. And so what we did is we took the population of each municipality, which gives us an indication of resources, right? So if you have a higher population, you probably have a little bit more resources as far as budgetary goes. And $1,000 probably doesn't sound the same to you as maybe somebody like Ferryville or Lynxville. So then the second data point was the ridership. And so what we did is we took a percentage of each of these and then we averaged those percentages together. The percentage, boy, this is printed way too small. The percentage that we used then, we multiplied that by the total local match that we figured we needed in 2025. So we have basically three or four groups, if you will. The first group is a $500 match. The second group is a $2,500 match. The third group is an $8,000 match. And the fourth group, which is a group of one, the city of La Crosse. They're obviously the big gorilla in the room. They've got 47% of the population and of the ridership. We're asking them for $30,000 a year. And then we did the same thing with the counties, the population and the ridership by county. And then took that percentage and multiplied it by their match dollars. So what this shows as a recommendation is that the city of Onalaska, so our ask of you tonight is $8,000 a year. Right now you're at $7,500 a year, so you're very close. The statistics that we did obviously in 2019 were pretty good to try to figure out that local match number. And we know it's going to take possibly some time. So we wanted to get this in front of you for your consideration tonight. We don't expect that number in 2023. It gives you a couple years to ramp up to that number from 7,500 to 8,000. And if you look at some of the other numbers in this report, some of the other municipalities are going to take a little bit bigger jump. We were at Westby last night. Westby was a little bit of a surprise to us. Their ridership is huge. They're jumping from $2,500 to $8,000 a year. And what they approved last night was to go to $4,000 next year and then up $1,000 each year. And they're going to ramp up to $8,000 by 2027. So we've got a few of these meetings under our belts. The other thing that's maybe you've read between the lines here, we're asking each municipality consider a 5-year commitment. That helps us significantly when we're planning for capital purchases. Our buses last between 3 and 5 years, so we've got to buy new buses every 3 to 5 years. We've got 5 buses that run daily, and we have 2 or 3 buses that are support buses that either don't run daily, or when there's mechanical issues, they run, or they run for some sort of support if one of the routes is overpopulated and we need additional ridership. So we actually own 8 buses. We're going away from that system. We're going to a lease system. So we will turn those buses over every 3 years on a 3-year lease if that works out. Right now, we were approved by the county as our administrator to do a 2-year lease on 2 buses because we don't have money beyond 2024. So it's a difficult decision to make because a 3-year lease would obviously be a better deal. You lease it longer and you pay less per year. But at this point, the way the finances go, without going through this process of adjusting everything for our revenue streams, the Smart Bus is basically not going to operate after December of 2024. So with Westby's approval last night, that's a great thing. We have a couple of other approvals that have happened. We haven't had any municipality that has said no yet. So that will help significantly. The other thing that we will be reviewing over the next couple of years is the $3 one-way fare. Obviously, with $4 a gallon gas and with everything that's going on, we may have to increase the fare for the riders. We hate to do that because we want to continue to grow ridership. We want to continue to increase that interest in the program, but it's going to be a tough decision. It's not easy to come in front of you and ask you for more money either, because we know, I work for the county. I know what the county's budget looks like. We know what your budgets look like. We're on revenue, shared revenue from the state, et cetera, et cetera. So this is not an easy ask, but it's an important one. So open it up for any questions, or Bob, if you had anything.
So I have actually, this question would be for Sabrina. So Unalaska with its transportation services co-ops with Holman and with Salem. Is the Smart Bus, is that separate from what happens with the local transit, or is that grouped in with that?
We do take the funds out of the transit budget. Anything that we donate to MTU or well, our contract with MTU, and then any donation that we make towards the Smart Bus, but we wouldn't charge that out to Holman in West Salem. It would just be a cost from the city's piece.
All right, so we don't have to, making a commitment does not put other communities on the hook without them having a seat at the table, right?
Correct.
And then the follow-up question, I believe there's one stop in Unalaska, is that correct? Where is that?
It's at the hospital, the Gunderson campus.
Okay, and then, well, I guess Holman and West Salem would not be as relevant, but there's a stop in West Salem, but not one in Holman, is that correct?
That's correct. We don't go north.
So I actually know people that use the service, and they are very wildly enthusiastic about the service that's provided. It's unique, and I think that there's a need for it. I think one of the challenges that you have is, at least as far as Unalaska's representation is, it's that point that you're going to is a point on the western part of town that's like, people are going there for a medical need. I've known some people that have considered moving to Unalaska, but it was like, well, where does the Smart Bus go? And oh, that doesn't work. Is the opportunity to add any other sites within our city realistic?
So we studied in 2019 when we added the green route, we studied a route going north to Arcadia, which would then serve the north part of Unalaska and Holman. There was not anywhere near enough demand from that location. There's just too much free parking, and it's just too easy to drive your own self from something like Holman, et cetera. So we would have needed a little bit bigger employment situation to the north. So we talked with Golden Plump and we talked with Ashley. Ashley has in 5 days a week, they have 3 different shift structures. So Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, they have different shift structures. That doesn't work for a transit bus. So what Ashley did is they did their own bus for employment, which means we don't get that demand for Smart, which means there's not enough demand to pay for a route. So we looked at it as an alternative. Gunderson continues. So Gunderson ridership is significantly higher in employees than patients. I think their percentage is something around 80%. It's healthcare workers. And so the healthcare workers that live in the Holman area continue to ask their employer to ask us to give them a route. And we continue to say, we'd love to provide that service, but we need this much ridership. And we don't, our surveys continue to not justify ridership to go north.
So I think one of the
Thing to add probably
Oh.
is the budget that we set allows for some freedom to do strategic planning and evaluate new stops and things like that. Whereas I think historically it's kind of been, I think you said shoestring and bare bones. So I think this leaves the opportunity open to probably not go north, but consider other stops in Unalaska perhaps. Right. Fair enough.
Yep, and we're doing marketing. I mean, we've got a marketing plan in place. That's not something we were able to do before this year. Our ridership continues to grow from COVID. COVID was a low point, obviously, for public transit. But it continues to grow. So, and we believe that marketing will be working.
I think one of the big challenges we have is I believe the smart bus has value, but most of the value is being centered on the healthcare system. And so for the city to allot funds for that without a lot of our citizens really having access, that's going to be a big challenge. Do we have anything in the budget for this, or is this ancillary to what we're working on?
For the share ride budget, I put a placeholder in, assuming we would put something towards the smart bus. I kept it at 7,500. It would be whatever you decide tonight on whether I keep that in there or increase it.
Right. So the good news is we don't have to cut something if we want to fund this.
Correct.
Okay. Any thoughts?
I don't think it's an unreasonable request, an additional $500. They don't even necessarily need us to go to immediately. We can incrementalize it over a period of years. It's I don't personally see that this is not doable. So I think it's certainly reasonable.
I'm not sure I want to make a commitment for future councils or future spending, but
I would have to go to common council anyway, but yeah.
I agree, though. I think we're
Yeah.
supportive in general with it, so. Yeah. But not committed today.
all right. So do we have a motion or any other discussion?
If we're not going to commit today, then I don't know that we need a motion. Just that we'd have
Don't need a
to.
motion, do we?
Do you want to move it to council for next week? If so, I would make a recommendation that you make a motion to,
Might be too
Non-
early.
Wait for the budget.
I'm thinking maybe in October, we might have a more clarity on where we're going in the budget for November. But so I'll make a motion to add this item back on the agenda with the common council in October.
I'll second that.
Okay, for discussion for your budgeting purposes, I know sooner is probably better than later, but when's your really need to know by?
It's future, so.
Yeah.
We should be good.
Yeah.
All right, so the motion is to refer this to the October meeting,
October common council, yeah.
the October Common Council meeting. All those in favor of the referral, please say aye.
I,
Aye. Okay, motion is referred. We'll discuss it at the full council.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Free bus?
Bribing elected officials is not.
it's actually a pretty serious.
Okay, let's go to item 5, the 2022 general fund financials. Sabrina.
Thank you, Chair. In your packet tonight, item 5, the 2022 general fund financials, that starts on page 1 of your packets. You can first see our balance sheet on pages 1 through 3. Then behind that is the budget report starting on page 4. In regards to our revenues, through the end of August of 2022, we have 9% remaining of what we expected, our anticipated revenues for 2022. So really ahead of where we were last year at this time. Last year at this time, we had 15% remaining. So we're sitting ahead of where we were last year.
By ahead, you mean ahead good, not ahead
And in a
fast.
good way, yes, thank you. So with only 9% remaining, we'll easily hit our budgeted revenues. Some of the things that have already come through and that will be coming through, if you look at page 4, some of our state aid payments, we are paid those on a quarterly basis. So the last quarter will be coming through here soon. Well, the third quarter and the last quarter will be coming in over the next couple of months. So we'll easily exceed our revenues in 2022 of what we budgeted. And if we take a look at expenses, if you look at kind of towards the end of our expenses on page 18, we have 36.6% remaining of our budgeted expenditures. Last year at this time, we were at about 41%, so we're a little behind of where we were last year. But if we think about how many months are left in the year, we'd want at least 33% remaining of our expenses. And due to the fact that we have 36, I feel that we're in a fairly good spot for trying to meet those budgeted expenditures.
Any questions for Sabrina?
All right, I will make a motion that we approve the 2022 general fund financials and place them on file.
Second.
Motion by Alder Smith, seconded by Alder Knott to approve the 2022 general fund financials and place them on file. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
General fund financials are approved. Item 6 is the 2022 Omni Center financials. Sabrina, do you want to make Dan come up and do that, or would you like to take the honors?
I can start, and then if Dan wants to add anything, he most definitely can. Starting on.
Let's make him come up and stand up there
Come
anyway.
on up. Starting on page 20 is the balance sheet for the Omni Center. Then behind the balance sheet is our budget report. In regards to revenues, we have 21.55% remaining of what we budgeted for 2022. I know there's some big events coming up as well in regards to revenues. So I would presume we would exceed our budgeted revenues, but I'll let Dan Wick continue on with that.
Yeah, I mean, we have some new events coming in, coming up here. We have MMA, which is it's been a first year and a couple now that we've been able to have 2 events of that. We have that this Saturday. We have Remax Picnic tomorrow night with MMA. And then next week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we have Dr. Pool. It's a brand new promoter in the area, bringing in 30 pool tables, running a pool tournament, 3 different types of divisions through that time. So that'll be a few of the new events that are, one of the new events that we have coming, forward. So we're, kind of busting at the seams right now with events up until we put ice in. So I'm pretty confident where we're sitting and what we have happening.
The other thing I will add with the revenues, we will have 2 quarters left of room tax too. A portion goes to the Omni, so that will also help with their revenues as well.
We're fully expecting to end up positive on that for the year.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen that often, does it? That's
It's happened twice since 1992, once last year and once in 2017, I believe.
I'll tell Justin to keep it up.
Justin is online. He did join, so.
Justin, keep it up.
All the team.
All right. Any other questions regarding the financials or any further discussion? Chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 2022 Omni Center financials and place them on file.
Second.
We have a motion by Alder Smith, seconded by Alder Knott to approve and place on file the 2022 Omni Center financials. All those in, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Financials are approved. We'll go on to item 7. Information Technology Managed Services Request for Proposals, RFP.
I will
This
let-
is Jared Holter.
Thank you. So I guess a little history here. The IT services provided to the city staff for the city to function have been in various locations over the years. Public Works has had the IT services for over 3 years now. With that, when we took over the IT services, we found some deficiencies within our systems really worked hard trying to get our systems up to the point where we are today. And I think we've made quite a bit of leaps and bounds as far as where we're at today versus where we were a few years ago. With that, as you know, we have one IT staff, IT manager, Nils Husker. So with that, with the systems we have, we have no network administrator. That's part of this contract. And when we took over, the contract was much smaller, but our services provided by our vendor at that time were lackluster, to say the least. So we have been, at that time, we actually went to MCS Services, found them as a local vendor. They had been working in other municipalities, so we brought them forward, and they've been working for the city for the last 3 years. As part of this, the new, to meet our purchasing policy, I went to staff a year ago, and it came out and said, gosh, this is going to be something we can't just bid out in a month and be able to get it brought forward and properly do it. So we extended the service contract with MCS for 1 more year. Staff started back in February of 2022, actually started the physical process of putting together and requests for proposals. At that time, spent multiple months working on it, then sent it out in July. And actually we advertised it, sent it to a variety of vendors that we could find in the area in Madison and Rochester. And once the request for proposals came back, we ended up with 3 providers that actually responded to our request for proposals. In the memo that I've provided on page 28 in your packet tonight, I have listed the 3 vendors. We did have a team of 4 score them, myself, Nils Husker, Caitlin Hagar, Information Systems Manager, and also Chief Ashbeck from the Police Department. You can see the various scores. We were, in reading through the proposals, there was a lot of work put into the proposals because there was many things that the city does, such as CJIS requirements for the police department. There's various things that we wanted done as far as the network was concerned. And trying to get all those things in one vendor was difficult. The EJ America vendor is actually based out of California. We actually had we had a bid alternate that we did not put into the memo tonight, but if we wanted the on-site services for that vendor, they were 3 times that amount. They were almost over 400,000 for the on-site services. So when we looked at the value based upon the cost you see tonight, staff did recommend MCS Networks after the scoring. After our relationships that have been built with MCS over the last 3 years, we feel we're getting a solid partner in working on our IT systems. Just as a note about the financial impacts, we have included the cost of $167,352 in the proposed budget. The 2022 cost was approximately $148,000. Part of that is we actually included some increase in services. We're making our vendor now provide inventory for us of new equipment when it comes out. And we are increasing the level of support on a few of our assets. So it's been a long road. We've learned a lot along the road, I think, as far as putting the RFP together, but we tried to get assistance from ones we found, but I think we've come to the end of the road where we've got a price that is well thought out. It's been vetted through the process, and I'm happy with if we can go this direction with MCS. I think we're going to get a good service once we're done. This is a contract that is 1 year that then is renewable by the city for years 2 and 3. So then this is a 3-year contract at the city's option. So I guess with that, I'd open up for questions unless Amanda's been involved a little bit too. I don't know if she's got anything to add, or we've got Sabrina kind of.
You're looking for an approval this evening, right?
We were looking for approval for the year 2023 for $167,352 for MCS Networks to provide our managed IT services.
I am not interested in changing gears at this point, and MCS is just up the road and they've been very good in my estimation. So I will make a motion to approve MCS Networks as the IT managed service provider for 2023 and approve the amount of $167,352.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Stephen Knott to approve MCS and for 167,352 is the IT managed services. Any discussion? Stephen?
So I'm assuming with the four-person committee that obviously some discussion took place, but was the scoring done independently with them or as a group?
Scoring was done independently and we had a wide variation on scoring. Some of the scoring, some of our scores had very low scores for some of our vendors and high scores for MCS. Some of it, like I said, the police department requirements for the CJIS requirements, some of our vendors did not include very much information on that. And that was alone a 15 point out of 100 area. And some of it, network administration was 20. We had system administration was 20. We had a variety of things. Cost was 15% of the 100 points for the RFP, but the scoring was very widely between our scores.
So there was 4 people and 100 points. So the highest score possible would have been 400.
Correct.
So 365 out of 400 is impressive.
Well, that was my point. I was pretty sure it had been done independently. I want to make sure. And if, with that being
Just as a highlight,
the case, it's a very clear committee consensus.
just as a highlight, some of our staff that were scoring did not feel there were certain people that gave us RFPs that could provide the service to us.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm very comfortable with it. Yeah, the scoring is very lopsided and the fact that everyone did it independently and still came to the same consensus. I'm convinced that this is worth the money. So,
Tom, you were the IT guy. What?
Yeah, and I'm pleased with them. I've been impressed with them. I've had dealings with them in the past and they're a good group. So I support it.
We as staff are with our current provider, we are very satisfied with their service. They have given us very good service over the last 3 years, responsive. There's always things whenever you have a vendor, whenever you have a consultant, whenever you have something that you're trying to always figure out how to get solutions to problems, and they've always tended to bring us solutions to problems.
They're very responsive. They have a good reputation in the community. Yeah, I support this too. So
I do understand it. We have looked at different models and everything. This is a large budget impact. I understand that totally. We do have, not all this is out of the general fund. We do have water, sewer, and utilities paying for it because they have a large impact on our IT infrastructure between the GIS system and our asset management system. But pretty much everything everybody does at the city now deals with a computer. So I mean, if our computer system goes down or if our vulnerability, one of the things I'd say with MCS is they are really on top of our vulnerability, working with NILS. That's one of the things that I feel very good about as far as our vulnerability is concerned. So I think working together, there's a lot of value here.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item 7 passes with MCS. Item 8 is the investment policy discussion. Sounds like fun, Sabrina.
Thank you. So in your packets tonight is our current investment policy at the city of Onalaska. I'm not looking to change our investment policy by any means. I just wanted to put that in the packet so you can reference back to it. Right now, historically, here at the city of Onalaska, for the 40 years prior to me being here, we have always kept our investments in savings accounts through local banks. And that's where they all sit today. I have had multiple people reach out to me. UBS and Dana Investments seem to be the two that reached out to me more recently. Inquiring on whether we want to invest some of our reserves in other types of securities, whether that be a debt security, whether we invest in CDs. I don't feel comfortable answering those questions to UBS or Dana Investments without hearing from the council and what your thoughts are in investing our reserves.
Stephen Nutt.
So savings accounts, from everything I understand, at least my personal opinion is those are money losers because they don't earn pretty much any interest worth mentioning. Meanwhile, of course, inflation continues on. So the money in that account is actually becoming less valuable every year. So I'm certainly open to looking at investments. I think it would be wise. But I think that we would need to have a fair amount of information on some of the options, especially with risk, historical returns, things of that nature. And then, of course, how much we want to take out of savings, because, investing over time, the market has shown that you're going to be a winner over time, but in any given year, you certainly can be a loser, and that could impact budgets. So there's a lot of questions to this. So I am intrigued. I definitely would like to see, some options for investing. So.
And no, the investments I think that you're talking about were like bond, muni bonds or CDs and the things that would get a little bit higher that were secure, but did not have rates that were approaching zero. I mean,
Which is what our savings accounts are right now. Even putting our funds into a money market account, we'd get more than what we get now.
Be like, what, 1.5 maybe?
I get 2.5 on my personal
I have them in money
stuff.
I haven't used money market in ages.
I mean,
Yeah.
you can.
4 or 5 in money market right now.
Okay, yeah,
Even that's very low risk.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
You'd be losing money less because it still wouldn't keep up with inflation, but your risk would be near zero. Wouldn't be zero. Savings account is basically zero risk.
right, so myself, I would be probably a lot more aggressive than would be prudent for a municipal body. However, I'd make the point that, when it comes to investments and you're dealing with taxpayers' money, it's you have to be a good steward. But at the same token, you kind of touched on it. Like if you were to lose money in an investment for a municipality, that would be catastrophic, at least in the minds of
Potentially.
the public. However, you get inflation that comes and essentially wipes out our budget, and people are, well, that's just life. And if we don't outpace on inflation, we're going to have to make cuts in services or wages, or so I would like to be as aggressive as Sabrina feels is prudent with our tax dollars, I guess. And if that means being more aggressive than just a simple savings account, I am all for it.
And I think that more than likely there, we might have more than one investment, have some savings, some in a very risky, really low interest, some in a little bit more risk, but still slightly higher. But yeah, we're not talking about investing in stocks and stuff. That's not going to happen.
So Bitcoin's not on the, Amanda
Bitcoin.
Jackson.
We're going-
Bitcoin, yeah, right. Even better, Bitcoin.
I will add in the investment policy, it does state that we have to do it in accordance with Wisconsin statutes. So
Sure.
CDs, US Treasury bonds or notes, the state of Wisconsin local government investment pool, and then they talk about some prohibited investments. So we would likely go out for an RFP for this, and the organizations that would bid it would have to take a look at our investment policy to see what they could offer us. I think Amanda wanted to touch on that too.
Amanda.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, I think perhaps the next step would be that Sabrina could put together a proposal for what investments or what amounts she thinks are appropriate to take to RFP. And then we could decide at that point if we're comfortable with that proposal, and then we would move forward with the RFP process.
The last one you'd mentioned is some of the options. That was Wisconsin municipality or something like that.
Wisconsin Investment Pool.
What is that?
So through the state, they have a local government investment pool, which we do have some funds at. And we do receive more than what a savings account would receive there. So that could be what you decide. We want to move more to this local government investment pool. It's through the state. And they have different funds that they invest the money in that follow the state statute.
Does the state have any type of insurance with that then, since it's state run? Oh, yeah, okay.
Guaranteed. It's worth looking into.
Yeah.
See if you can get a little bit more or something. Yeah.
And just for history, I think it was in maybe the 2020 budget. There was the investment income went down, and that had a huge impact, and that affected our ability to staff. So if we can get some of a return to recapture some of that, that's, I mean, I think we're better than we were maybe a year ago, but it's still nowhere near where it was 3-4 years ago. So I'm all in favor of this. Is this something we also want to table to the full council? Because it's,
I think we
it's
need
kind of
a,
major, and you're not looking for a motion tonight. This is just kind of a
Just-
pulse.
Just some direction on where you'd like me to go. If you'd like me to start taking a look at an RFP and bring that forward in the future, just direction.
Well, we have other members of council here. Are we okay with
We're all.
asking for an RFP?
I think we should.
Getting
ask-
a yes
just
nod from
information, that's all.
Leanne, Alder Wolf?
I think we're all here. so-
Yes, please get an RFP to
Great.
provide better rates.
I'll try to have it for October, but it may be November.
It's fine.
Okay,
Whatever.
All right, well, thank you.
it's a great idea. All right,
Next, we'll go on to the 2023 budget strategy discussion.
Yeah, so we just want, this is kind of a combination discussion that Sabrina and I wanted to bring forward. And I would also invite any council members in attendance today to join in with this as well. We're not asking for a motion or any voting, but we would like some feedback. And so as we approach the 2023 budget, we knew that this was going to be a somewhat challenging budget due to various costs and inflation. And so right now we do have a shortfall. It started actually much higher. Sabrina's got it down to about 260,000.
Sorry, could you repeat that? How much?
So our current shortfall is $260,815. However, that is not budgeting for certain things and takes a few considerations. And so we did go back to department heads and we asked them to cut 2% out of all of their budgets. I will say that that is challenging for our department heads, primarily because almost all of them, with the exception of about 2, did not increase their budgets at all due to inflation. And so they already essentially cut back just in the sense that they're not taking into consideration inflation. And then we asked them to go ahead and cut another 2% off that. And so we do have some numbers for that. But I think I had mentioned previously that one of the things that we have available for us this year is the fact that because of inflation, we have more flexibility with that expenditure restraint cap that we haven't had in the past. And what we could do is we could institute a recycling surcharge. And that would be a cost of about $8.09 per quarter per household. It would be charged on the utility bill and essentially would be a pass-through fee. And so we would be basically simply passing through the cost of recycling that the city pays an outside service provider on to the consumer. Recycling is not something that we are obligated as a municipality to provide, but do because it is a good service. Also, it would be significantly less expensive for us to pass that cost on than to ask them to, say, contract for themselves to get recycling. And so That brings in about $223,423. And it would be a surcharge that would be charged out to any residential residents with 4 or less units. And I want to have this discussion now because if this is the direction that the council would like to go and would support, there's a lot of back end work on staff. We have to figure out how to bill it. We have to get those things in place before December. We would have to change ordinances. We would have to have resolutions. It's not simply just including the anticipated amount in the budget. There's other items that would have to be taken care of. And so we have looked at a lot of options as far as cutting back. And we're going to talk about, how to budget for the city administrator position here as well as part of this discussion, but we as staff and Sabrina and I have not really found a way to master that shortfall without looking at that recycling surcharge unless it is the purview of this council to cut services and staff.
Would that recycling just be a one-time year for 1 year or?
It would be
now?
moving forward. So we would basically be passing that cost on and we would not be profiting on it. It would be simply whatever the cost of the city is, we would pass on to the cost to the resident. And it would be billed quarterly, and Jared has perhaps more detailed numbers, but I think in the next year, that cost would be $8.09 per quarter. So I mean, it's a fairly nominal amount of money over the course of the year. And then that is a contract that we do bid out. And I think it's included in our refuse contract. So it goes through like 2027 right now. So we could get you those costs of what it would be through that contract. But so we're just kind of looking for your thoughts on that because ultimately at the end of the day, we want to bring a balanced budget and this allows us to do that. But if that is absolutely not the purview of the council, then like I said, we have to have a discussion on services and staff.
Or not.
Yeah, so my view on fees is, I think, already fairly public. It's that fees should only be for a service that is provided. It shouldn't be, we shouldn't be charging fees for revenue. And in this case, that's exactly what this is. This is for a service provided. As Amanda said, that this would be just to help offset the cost the city already has to provide that service to the citizens. I don't think it's unreasonable. And I think it's for the vast majority of the citizens certainly would be affordable. At $8 and change per quarter, you're talking less than $3 a month. So.
Yeah, I agree with you, Steve. I think so. It's a fair ask.
Yeah.
And it gets us in at least better position than we would be the other way. So.
And it's offsetting a service that we provide.
Yes, exactly.
So.
That's my thought too.
I take actually kind of a contrary position. I understand that we have a problem and this solves the problem, but I think that we're taking a kind of a short-term horizon problem and exchanging that for a longer term one. I generally, I mean, you can't talk about fee for service. I mean, we're not adding a new service. We're continuing a service and we're using this funds to pay something else. I think the strategy, I mean, I'm not interested in cutting services. I'm not interested in cutting wages. So there's a dilemma. I think this is the year, the approach I would probably take is twofold. One, I think this is the year that we would tap into reserves to meet the budget. And I would actually probably include some allowance for COLA in that. You can't do that all the time, or you can't do that in consecutive years without risking your investment grade rating. And that's something that we absolutely have to avoid. But it would make things more difficult in the following year if we exceed the spending cap, because we'd lose I think it's $80,000 in expenditure restraint, but that kind of resets the future budgets going forward. $8 is not a lot per quarter, to your point, I get that. It is, however, it's not very progressive if you are really struggling. I mean, $8 if you're living in some parts of town is an afterthought. And for other people, if you're struggling for milk or bread or whatever, it's a larger percentage of their income, albeit that it's very small. So, and if we institute this, once you have that revenue stream coming from a recycling tax in this case, it's going to be there for Onalaska probably forever. And a lot of complaints we get from the public is, geez, we get nickel and dimed and feed to death. Paying our bills and paying salaries and everything like that, the appropriate venue for that is the general levy, and that's taxes. And it's kind of unfair that the state sets these guidelines that we have to follow, but follow them we must. And I would go that route. I would actually petition the state that the caps that we have on spending, to my understanding, give no allowance for the CPI or an inflation adjustment. And whether we pass some resolution, I don't know if it would go anywhere, but I think we as a city should lobby the state to allow us to do what we need to do to maintain services and pay our bills. So to me, I applaud staff for coming up with a solution to the problem. But we're really kind of doing a shell game. We're taking something that, we're already providing a service for, we're adding a fee so we can pay other things. And I think it's a little less transparent. And like, if we're going to tax people, let's just tax it and put it on the bill. So at least it's commensurate with incomes based off of what people have for their buildings. So but that's just me. I'd be interested to see what the rest of council thinks. We do need to have a balanced budget. So one way or the other, I'm sure we'll get there. Stephen.
Yeah, so all good points. Also, potential options out there. But I guess, with the shell game, I'm almost thinking, like tapping into reserves would also be part of the shell game, because in 1 year, we'll be right back to having to make another tough decision of cutting services or cutting personnel, or finding out how to offset some cost of services so we don't have to cut them. I think that one of the options on the table, if we're not going to offset some of this cost for providing the service, would be, as Amanda said, we're not required to do recycling. We may just end up cut recycling, which would probably be less popular with a good number of people, I think, in the city. I could be wrong. But again, it's less than $3 a month. I know that there are a lot of folks out there with tight budgets, but I've got to think if recycling is important to them, they would certainly find $2 and change or a month to do recycling. So.
Amanda Jackson.
Why don't we I think Leanne I'll let her go first.
Alder Stokes.
One question that I have to begin with is, you talk about recycling, but only residential. So you don't bring commercial into any of your.
They commercial entities privately pay for their refuse and recycling already in the city.
Okay.
Okay, so a couple things just to clarify here. We are required to do a recycling program.
We are.
State statute, have to do it.
Okay.
You want to pick it up at your house, but we are required to do a recycling program. That's been in state law since the
Oh, so we'd have to get a
late
recycling.
80s. So we have to do something.
Okay, yeah.
So we can't cut that. We could do it different, just say, try and renegotiate contracts and things and do things different, but we do have to offer something. Currently, our solid waste budget is considered enterprise fund, so it's off the general tax levy, but it's considered a different area. Currently, we are with our city contract, and we pick up refuse and recycling from single family through 4-unit homes. So anything 1 through 4 units. So if it's a single family home, a duplex, a 3-plex, or a 4-plex, the city will provide those services. Anything 5 units and above, commercial, industrial, institutional, any of those things, that service is not provided by the city. So we have contracts in place to do recycling, refuse pickup, pick up Christmas trees. There's different things that are in that contract. Leaf vacuuming service, which comes out of our stormwater budget currently, because it provides a service. It keeps the pollutants out of our stormwater system. So there's a variety of services in that solid waste contract, but it's only for 1 through 4 units. So for instance, if you have a business or commercial entity and you sweep the leaves to the curb, we drive by, we don't actually pick them up. That,
The one thing that I don't think it's something that we should not look at. I'm in favor of this. I think that, but the one thing that people were saying, well, maybe some people in the area don't have that, but then they wouldn't have a recycle, they won't have a bin to put it in if they didn't want to participate in the recycling, correct? Each house, or do they have to have one?
they have to
Even if we are charging them for it?
correct. Currently, as part of the general tax levy,
Okay.
we do not physically go out every week and do a cart count and see, go through the list. To be honest with you, we could use more staff to do solid waste services within the city to ensure that we're getting better participation rates and things. But currently, if someone does not participate, it's part of their general tax levy, but we do not go out and physically go out and do a lot of enforcement action within the city or solid waste services.
My concern is that, if in their minds, the private citizen said, well, I'll just put it in with my trash and then I won't have to pay for it. But if it's going to be charged anyway, then they wouldn't do that, So I guess you have to look at, because I don't think La Crosse offers recycled.
Oh, yeah.
Do they?
They have a
They?
cart. They approximately 10 years ago, the city of Onalaska and La Crosse participated in a joint study with the La Crosse County Solid Waste Department at the landfill. We spent a year having monthly meetings on how we thought we could possibly partner and try to look for ways to save money as combination of services. And once we got done with the study, we came to the conclusion that we were all better off to just negotiate our own contracts and do everything like that. Especially because the county did not want to participate because there's such a variety of difference in services. Like if you're in some of the townships have pickup, some of them have a drop-off site, just different levels, do you pick it up every week? Do you pick it up every 2? Things like that. So the city of Onalaska at that time, we went out for bid, and La Crosse went out for bid at the same time. So the city of La Crosse and Onalaska both went to automated cart systems at that time.
La Crosse does not offer yard waste, so that is
That's-
something
Okay, that's what they don't.
that they don't.
Just on a side note, when I was canvassing, there was a gentleman and he wants to have every week. And he was adamant about it. He said that he has, most of his stuff is in his recyclables and wanted to know why we couldn't have it done on a weekly basis. So,
And we have reviewed that. And right now, picking it up every other week, we pay our contractor to a little over $200,000 per year to pick that up. If we went to every week, they probably would not double the cost. But they've got to assume that now that cart's going to go out every week, so it's got to get tipped. So every time they've got to have a truck go out and tip that cart and make the trip through the city, they've got to almost burn the same resources. So the only way they save is if the cart only goes out every other week, which would happen. But looking at that, so what we offer presently is we can offer a second recycling cart we basically take $32 a year. That is the reason we request it. And that pays for the recycling cart to get tipped. Basically, we're adding one more unit to our contract. Part of the reason we didn't want to have that free is because I didn't want as staff, when we went through this, if we make it free, well, I'm gonna call for an extra cart just because I might need it once a year. And now we're paying for that cart every month, even if it doesn't go out to the curb. So we're walking a fine balance of how much do we charge? Do we not charge? How much service? And I do get that comment. Probably I get a call about twice a year, that very same comment that we should be picking up our recycling, do more for the environment, try and do those things. And we've tried to balance financial impacts and budgetary impacts with our services offered. And,
Yeah, just to end, I am definitely in favor of this, and I don't think that charge is anything that is something that we cannot feel that we can, put on as a fee. That's just the way I think. Thank you.
Again, just
Wolf had her hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. A few things. We've come a long way with our recycling. Last 25 years. I know when we first went to single stream recycling and that contract, I know there was some pushback and people didn't really care. There was a faction of people who didn't really care for it at first, but then every year you came back and the numbers grew and grew and grew. So if anything, I would not be in favor of maybe rolling that back a little bit in order to save money, because I think people, it's just a program I think that has just grown. And people, there's a fair number of us, I think, that almost enjoy all the recycling. And when it comes to, and I have heard that statement a number of times through the years about, I could really use another cart. So I know just when I hear, I know in my own neighborhood with our cul-de-sac, we all know that we can borrow some space, but my caveat always is just make sure whatever you put in my cart, it's legal. Cause I don't want to get a call from Jared. You put, the Wolf household had something in there illegal. Cause they're putting in things in the dark of the night. I look out and I was like, someone's in there and they're putting stuff in our cart. I certainly hear what Alder Stevens is talking about. The one thing that I have, my concerns continue to be that our hands are tied, by the continued actions or inactions of the Wisconsin State Legislature. I just don't see any relief. This has been going on for 15, 20 years or whatever. It's just, I think we can send all the resolutions we want and they're just not going to change until the legislature possibly changes. And I don't even know if that will make any change. I would be extremely hesitant to tap our reserves. Sabrina would have to try to talk me into that. I don't know whether she's going to be one who's going to be. And lastly, how would this be billed? Like in what fashion would it be billed?
Would be included on the water bill.
On the water bill?
on our quarterly utility bill,
Okay.
we would have a line item that would be called out.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Not.
And just, I'm pretty sure we're all clear, but I just want to kind of put a reminder out there that in the end, this isn't a recycling issue. This is a $260,000 plus budget shortfall issue, of which one option of being able to resolve that would be this recycling fee starting. If we were to decide we don't want to do that, we still have the problem ahead of us, which is a $260,000 and change budget shortfall, where we will have to find some other way to either gather some funds to offset services, reduce services, or eliminate services and or personnel. Those are the options we would have, because a $260,000 plus budget surplus or budget shortfall is still there, no matter what we decide. If we decide we're not interested in pursuing the recycling fee. So.
You got it. We'll go with Sabrina first.
So that's okay. Mayor Smith,
Are you yielding your time to the mayor?
I am yielding my time to her.
Thank you, Sabrina. I was just going to ask Amanda to kind of recap what it takes in order for the city to charge a fee, because we are really limited fees have to meet a certain standard of criteria before we can implement them. So when you're saying, there is justification for this fee, and I'm not saying I'm pushing for it, but I just think I want to make sure everyone understands fully that there are limitations for fees. Can you
Yeah.
explain?
Yep, so there are actually a lot of things that we can't charge fees for, or we have to follow certain statutory regulations too. So for instance, just to be very clear, we are proposing a recycling surcharge and not a refuse surcharge, because we can charge a refuse surcharge, but if we do that, it can only be the difference between what we budgeted in the year 2013 and what the cost is today. And so there's a state statute that calls out very specific public services that are limited with that. And so for instance, fire is another one where we could charge a fire protection fee to our citizens. However, it can only be the difference between what we have budgeted today and what we had budgeted in 2013. We also, going back to what the mayor said, we can't make a profit off fees. There are restrictions in place. So we really can only pass through the cost of certain fees to our residents. And this just happens to be one that we are able to pass on to residents at the cost that we bear it at. Madison actually adopted this in this year. So they went through this process in 2021 and they implemented it across the city of Madison this year. Theirs was closer to $8 a month for their residents. So ours are actually would be significantly less. But you are seeing this, to Dan's point, this is not, unfortunately, this is a short-term fix to a long-term problem. It's going to help us, but it's not going to solve that. I mean, you have West Allis, I think, is doing studies on what kind of options they have. They're a city much like us that has grown to their limit and has no future room for development. And so I do think it's going to bring up, in the future, larger conversations that we should probably start having. But this is an option that does at least help us in the short term. And I did just want to add that the current shortfall of that 260,000 does not give us a COLA for our non-union staff. That would be at a 0% increase. And so if we were to provide an increase of any sort to our staff, it would be above and beyond that shortfall.
Stephen?
As far as, you're talking a long-term problem, there are other options out there, which Sabrina already presented one, and that's if we look at investing some of our savings and hopefully get a 2, a 3, or a 4% type of a return, that also addresses this same type of an issue. So
I agree. However, I don't think we can't start spending that until.
No, I'm just saying, no, it's a long-term problem. I mean, so this is other long-term options is what I'm trying to get at. So, because again, it's not a recycling issue, it's a budget shortfall issue. So.
I don't think anybody is interested in not having recycling in Alaska, or it'd be nice to add the service, but I don't think this is the year to approach adding a second every week recycling. But it's a nice future thought, I guess. All right, so do we have enough information, or do we want
I think we do on the recycling. We did want to talk about one other kind of major budget issue, and that is budgeting for the city administrator's salary. And so I know Sabrina had handed out a piece of paper in your mailboxes that kind of outlined we have kind of a twofold question that we'd like to talk through. And the first is, at what amount do you want to budget the city administrator's salary? So our city administrator was at a grade 6. And so we would normally just budget the position at the same grade for the next year. However, is it likely that the city would hire somebody at a grade 6? And so do you want to reduce that to either perhaps a grade 3 or a grade 1 into next year? That's sort of question number one. And then the other question is, how long do you want to budget the city administrator position for in 2023? Do you think that you will have that vacancy filled, by March 1st, April 1st, May 1st, June 1st, July 1st? Should we budget for a half a year? Should we budget for 7 months of the year? What is kind of the thought of the council for the timeline? And I'm going to turn it over to Sabrina now.
And then also included in that, how do you want me to budget for your interim? For if you decide you want to budget for 6 months, then we budget our interim for 6 months. So just kind of, that's our third fold, I guess, of the conversation. So just how we want to go about that.
So the latter part of the question, at least in my opinion, and other people can weigh in, is the interim funding should go through until we start the full-time city administrator position. To the latter, I mean, we're to September now, we're gonna go into budget time. I do not think that budgeting for the full year is in our wildest wishes would ever happen. So the question is, when do we think it would be reasonable to hire somebody? And remember, we have to review the job description and then approve that, and then it has to go through council. So, and that's happening at budget time. So I do not think that we will be able to do that and then put the job out there, review the candidates and hire and select somebody. I mean, April is pushing it. I think that safely we'd probably be like June or July is when I would budget it for. But I would
So,
take other people's feedback.
yeah, I agree with your overall premise that there's no need to be putting in a budget for 12 months for city administrator, for the full-time city administrator, you know, when we hire someone, because it's not going to happen. Yeah, the job description, I'm thinking we probably won't get locked down until probably December. And then you're going to have some months of, you know, advertising, recruiting, interviewing, making a decision. And I'm sure that will be at least 4 months. I'm willing to take risk on the 8-month piece, maybe 7. I don't know. I'd want to go less than that because we might end up with a budget shortfall. And I'm kind of thinking, you know, the middle ground here, although I think we'll probably be advertising it for the step 1. We'll have to have that decision at the common council, but that's kind of my gut. I would actually go with, the 7 or 8 months at the step 3, just to be safe.
May, June kind of thing.
Well, I'm thinking it would probably be April, May. We
Or May or
probably have
June,
somebody on
mid-year.
board. And that's really, when you look at the hiring sequence, I guess nationwide too, most folks are starting to look at if they're, making that move, if it's, you know, fitting in their own.
Financials, yeah.
That they'd be doing it in that April, May, June timeframe.
7 months would put us at June, right? So
Well, no, that would be 7 months of pay would put you through May. Yeah, so I guess we might be talking the same thing, different semantics, but yeah, so I'm almost looking at the 8 months though is what I would be recommending, which would mean that we would not budget for January, February, or March, but we would for April on.
correct me if my math's off. So July through
January, February,
December
March,
would be
April,
6
we wouldn't
months.
for May.
So June would be the 7th month.
It would be the 7th.
First 6 months of the year would be
But it would-
January through June.
You'd be budgeting for 7 months, which means you would not for 5.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense.
Okay.
I was looking at it backwards, so.
Okay.
During that time, then you would get the job description done,
Advertise.
advertise,
recruit, yeah,
post,
yeah,
and get all
post,
that
yeah,
stuff and
yeah.
then start.
Then interviews and
And a
then it would have
decision.
to go to council too. And-
Yeah, and I do see that probably taking a good 4 months. It may take longer, but we'd be assuming risk.
It's hard to tell, yeah.
If we're gonna say, no, we think it'll take 5 or 6 months, we'll be taking some risk because we won't have budgeted for it. We could be finding the right
know what
person,
the
then saying,
market's
well, we
gonna be
can't bring
like.
you on for 2 months. So,
Okay, so with respect to the step, I mean, that was another factor in there.
yeah, it's just a matter of how much risk we're willing to take. We have to have a
Quickly,
budget
yeah.
figure in for Sabrina for the 2023 budget. So it's how much risk do we want to take? That's why I'm kind of taking the middle of the ground, 8-month, you know,
6 to 8.
taking some risk, but not a lot, saying let's fund it, let's budget it for the 8-month step 3. Yeah. Dan, Leon's over here.
Alder Stokes.
The one question that I have is, we talked about changing your job description. And if you change your job description a lot from where you had it before, then that means that your money that you might want to pay that person is going to be, if you're taking some things away from that person that were done before by Eric. So I think that has something to do with it also, because if you're not expecting them to do as much, that position to do as much as you did in the past, then you wouldn't want to pay somebody the same amount that, you know, he was getting if you're talking about going in the high end of the budget.
Well, this wouldn't be how much we're actually paying the person. That would be in a negotiation during the hiring. This is just a placeholder on the budget. Yeah.
Amanda?
But I think it still makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately the downside is that going into budget right now, the way we are, we likely, as somebody said, we'll be doing the job description after the budget. And so, but there is a chance that if we make significant changes to the job description, anytime we do that, we would regrade the position. And so ultimately it could end up moving grades depending on the changes in the job description, which could, you know, depending on which way it goes, could, you know, result in savings to the city as well. We just likely won't know that, unfortunately, going into the budget.
All right, so Stephen was thinking step 3, 8 months. I think we could push it to 7, but
6, I'd say 6 to 8. Anywhere like that. I don't know.
It's just how much risk. you wanna
And you
take.
just don't know what the market's gonna drive either. I don't know, anybody have an idea what the market is today, or any HR folks?
I mean, it took Eau Claire 2 years to hire their city manager recently, but I mean, I think the market's all over there. I mean,
Better today than it was a few years ago, I'm sure.
yeah. And so it could be a very quick process or it could
Look at
be,
that magazine, there's a lot more openings than there was a couple years ago with all the COVID stuff, so.
yeah, it could be a long process. I don't think we'll know till we're in it.
well, and one thing to think about is if you have a prospective candidate and like the salary is there, they have the job offer, we can say that this starts on X date. And if I were leaving another position and I knew I had something lined up, then
We might
hey,
be.
you got a month
surprised.
vacation or something like that. That might not be where somebody has to leave their former position on Friday and start here on Monday.
I mean,
So
generally,
We can start paying or make the job contingent on this is when we start. And they'll either accept it or they won't.
Well, and to that point, generally a position of this caliber is going to have to give 30 days notice to their former employer anyway. I mean, we would require that. We require that of all our department heads. Obviously, it doesn't always happen, but in a perfect world.
That would add a month
Surprised,
to
might
the,
surprise you. We might get something sooner than you think. You don't know.
that's true. But
Yeah, you just don't know. Let's start somewhere.
all right, so
Got enough to,
is this, do you want us to vote on this or?
I don't think you need.
I
to vote
don't know
on
that
it.
we have a consensus, but we're kind of close to each other, so.
I feel comfortable at 8 months, and step 3 as well. I was kind of hoping you guys would be towards the middle, so I. feel
We didn't talk in
comfortable.
advance, by the way. This is.
No, we did not. I feel comfortable being at the step 3 and anywhere between that 6 and 8 months. I just didn't feel that it was appropriate to do the full year.
oh, I think you're right on that. That's way too much. We could always tweak it right later if we had to adjust it right down the road.
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
But we could always tweak it later if we go in further and we decide to change it either way.
Yeah,
Well-
like this is just what we're gonna budget.
Placeholder, it's a
Obviously,
placeholder to start with.
Whatever your job offer is can be
Yeah,
lower than this, more than this. It's just for budget purposes.
right, just for budget, yeah.
So to maybe backtrack into some of the previous conversations. If we were to budget this amount, will that, out of that 260,000, could we subtract the difference here? Or was that already taken into account?
That it's not fully taken into account. So some of the administrator position is charged to the general fund and some is charged to other funds within the city. It's only a portion is charged to the general fund, so it will help us in a sense, yes.
Right, so if, without having to get a calculator out or do the exact total, where does that take our $260,000 shortfall? Roughly,
Without the recycling fee or with the recycling fee?
let's do it without the recycling fee and then we can do the math on.
I mean, we're able with the recycling fee, department had some cutbacks and reducing the administrator salary to a certain amount, we are able to add a COLA and balance the budget. We can get there. If we add the administrator back in and we don't have the recycling fee, then we're still back to the conversation on services.
Okay, do you have a number or?
I could get you exact, but it's around 50,000-ish. Well, 8 months, it's close. For 6 months, it was 50,000. For 8 months, it's probably gonna be about 30,000.
So the shortfall would then be roughly about 210,
No, it would be 230.
230, okay.
Still without a COLA.
Still without a COLA. If I did run some numbers by cutting, switching this around, and some of the cutbacks that department heads made, we could put a COLA in with the recycling fee.
Of a 1%, 1%.
And that's a 1% in January, 1% in July.
Let's do the recycling.
Alder Wolf.
Chair, so 2 quick questions. One, will this item be on council for approval next week? And number 2, with these numbers, do these include roll-ups or not?
Those numbers do not include roll-up.
Thank you.
We were not going to bring this to council. This was really just kind of a directional, and ultimately the budget's going to go to council. I mean, you're going to get this in your budget book first round. And so this is really just giving us guidance to prepare that final budget book for you to look at. And then you could decide what you would want to do at that time. And so we could put it on council if you want to talk about it again, but we don't usually preliminarily approve items on the budget ahead of time.
The only reason why I ask is typically F&P does not make decisions for all 6. Is my only concern.
And we're not looking for decisions. We're just looking for guidance.
And I
We can put it to council. On the other hand,
I would love to give guidance then. So if I may,
right, so
I said I would like to give guidance on, or if I could have input, if that would be okay regarding this.
fine with me. I think this is important discussion, so.
Yes, well, that's why I just assumed that's why I asked if it's going to go to council. I'm siding with Sabrina, and we have not talked about this. I was thinking more, my initial thought was probably like July 1st was anticipated. Was kind of maybe plan on that, because I don't know where we're going to be and how fast we're going to go along in the process. I know, like you said, was it Eau Claire took 2 years? I know when we did this the last time 5 years ago, I think they had someone and then that fell through and there was another year. We could get lucky and it could happen pretty fast, but I don't think we need to rush the process. I think our current interim city administrator is prepared. I think you went into this for at least 6 months.
Yeah, I assumed it would take at least 6 months.
I would be thinking more like start date of July 1st is what I've been thinking all along. That's just my thoughts.
So you're talking step 3, 6 months.
Yeah, about 6 months.
Or you're talking step 1 or 6 months.
I'm thinking, I'm not really sure it's not going to be, certainly not step 6. It's either going to be step 1 or step 3 for 6 months. At least that's my thinking. That's what I've just kind of had in the back of my head all along, just in discussions. But it's really a crapshoot. I mean, none of us can.
Yeah,
We don't know.
100%.
It could change.
We don't know.
We could have that placeholder there and not find anyone, as you said. So, and then that's money that
Just
we
a
never
start.
really allocated. So
I think if we went with step 1, we're kind of limiting our options, and I don't want that to influence
Yeah.
decision-making process.
agree.
You get somebody that's skilled and we're like, well, we didn't budget for that. That's just poor planning on our part. But, all right, so we will, well,
I'm gonna cede to the mayoral voice in the sky. Tim, did you want to weigh in?
oh, mayor, wherefore art thou? She's really in the sky.
It's complicated. Um, I'm here now. Thank you. No, I'm just kind of worrying about this because with the system that we have with the expenditure restraints, you need to remember, like this year, we're going to go up to the levy limit and we're going to go over the expenditure restraint. I'm imagining Sabrina can speak more to that. But the following year, we have to budget that administrator position for the full entire year. So if you don't budget it, if you only budget it for half a year this year, then keep in mind that you already have an increase of 50%. If you start if you use the July 1st date, which is the date, I think the realistic date for the new person to start. If you don't budget it for the full year, you have to have it the full year the next time. And so you're already kind of messing us up for our expenditure restraint. But maybe Sabrina can disagree with me. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's something that we know we have to pay a full year of.
I won't disagree with you, Mayor, but I will say we will reach we will hit our expenditure restraint this year. In the past, we haven't hit our max, and I think purposefully, and we didn't go up to our max, but we should every year try to get to our max for expenditure restraint, so that it puts us in a better position for the next year. And we are going to go over this year, which essentially will help us next year in a sense, because we'll go over it this year. And so it'll be hopefully easier to hit it next year, because it is based on your prior year's expenditures. And this year we don't know yet. I believe it will be on the 15th of September or the 20th. I can't remember the date off the top of my head. But we will receive from the state what the CPI is and what the max will be able to go for our expenditure restraint yet. So I don't know what our max is yet.
So this actually kind of goes back to the mayor's point. We can solve a short-term problem by budgeting less for the city administrator salary, but in the future year, then we have to, we've got that much more to make up. But you know, like there's a pressing need now, and it's quite the quandary that we are in. So.
Well, I've heard some of us say 8. I've heard some of us say 6. Some say 6 or 7. So why don't we just, why don't we just go with 7 months, right in the middle? Just say, let's just plan on that at step 3. Everyone's in agreement.
So 7 step 3, but we can also bring it to council next week for
Yeah, sure. Well,
that way people can digest it.
Sure.
All right, we good?
So-
No, we're not good.
Sorry,
Sabrina,
to confirm, you want it on non-consent for next week's council.
on non-consent, yes. Would that please Alder Wolf, the council president? All right. What was that, item 9? We talked on item 9 for quite a while.
And
So let's go to number 10, the 2023 Onalaska fee schedule. This will be, is this an Amanda thing?
It'll be a little bit of both of us and maybe some of our lovely department heads who are hanging out in the back of the room. So in your packets tonight is the proposed 2023 City of Onalaska fee schedule. The items that are in red are items that we are anticipating to change for 2023. So if you have any questions, I'm sure all of those lovely people back there would be willing to answer them, or if Amanda and I can answer them as well.
So, I mean, do we have more room to be more aggressive on some of these other fees rather than adding a new one?
I think we're already kind of aggressive in some of them for this year, for the change. And a lot of these fees are not necessarily fees that everyone, like that you could just decide. For example, a building permit, you decide you're not going to remodel your house, so then we're pretty conservative when we estimate for our permits and all of our revenues, just because we don't know. These are just kind of unknowns that we don't know if we're going to have these fees, if people are going to pay them for different services throughout the city. Does that answer your question, Dan?
Yeah. The note on. Oh,
So we did,
just out of curiosity, we have no charge for the ultralight aircraft operator permit. Is that an FAA thing?
I don't think anybody has that.
It stuck out because it specifically said no charge. I don't think that's going to solve our $200,000 budget shortfall, but
We will look into that one and get back to you. But I don't know that we actually have ever issued that permit.
all it takes is one person. willing
It
to
might
pay.
also be the permit we're issuing to ourselves, and so we will check and get back to you on that one. Katie did increase her fees a little bit based on inflation in building and inspection, and so you'll see a lot of the increases are there. Obviously, that is an area where we have an intense amount of staff time spent, and so we felt it was appropriate to increase some of those fees. We also actually went through our first UDC text amendment, as you all know, where we had a citizen write proposed language for the code. That takes actually a considerable amount of staff time. There were multiple meetings that went into that prior to that happening. There was a public hearing. And are still now a lot of staff time going back into that. And so we did increase the fee for that. We did kind of just generally look at inflation. We try not to round up exactly by inflation because then we end up with a lot of very odd fees. And people tend to like round numbers. So we do try to keep them kind of generally in there, but we did kind of not go up as high as inflation, but did do a small increase for a lot of those kind of building, commercial and inspection type fees.
Yeah, I was doing math on this. This is less than inflation, so it's actually, I still think fairly generous. Yeah.
This is something we've normally done more towards the end of the year, but for budgeting purposes, Sabrina would prefer that we approve it ahead of budget time so that we can better budget.
All right. Committee, we want to approve this and
I'll make a motion that we approve and send forward to common council.
A second.
motion by Alder Knott, seconded by Alder Smith to approve the 2023 Onalaska fee schedule. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That is approved. And that ends the finance section here at 8 p.m. So we'll go to item 11 under personnel, and we don't have Amy Franson, but we have Lexi. Welcome to the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Let me make sure. I'm not used to doing that. Okay. Lots of good, exciting things here from HR today. We'll do our normal recruitment update. In August, there was 0 regular positions filled. Our office specialist position was filled. She started yesterday in the finance department, so stop down and meet her. Dana Littlejohn is her name. And then on to the next item in your packet. As you can see in your packet, the first step in our discussion for the administrator vacancy would be for council to determine the structure that they want to see the administrator position be. It could either stay as it is. We could combine it with another department head. It could be contracted out. Like I said, the first step is for council to give direction as how they want it structured. What would be the best outcome for the city? In your packet, you'll see there's a lot of history from 2015. And of course, I wasn't here, but maybe there's other people that could speak on it. But at least the summary there of when they were looking at the administrator structure back then. And all of the details are in there. And then after council determines how they want the structure to be for that position, then HR can be there to facilitate and guide through the whole process of filling that position. We'll provide timelines the whole way. We can assist with the job description and take it from there.
Alder Wolf.
Thank you, Chair. And as a follow-up, and thank you for being here this evening. So just give you just very brief background. I met with, as council president, I met with Mayor Kim and Amy with HR and also our interim city administrator, Amanda. And I shared the concern that I had that once we appointed Amanda as our interim, I didn't feel like there was really a direction that we were given from that last meeting, that special meeting we had until today. And my concern that I shared with staff was I didn't want more time to go by without at least bringing something before F&P and council, just to kind of keep us moving forward, keeping that train moving forward on the tracks. So I had asked, so no decisions were made. But I didn't feel comfortable with just dead air for another month. So I asked Amy, and we all kind of agreed that Amy would put together what she put forth tonight. We all did some research about kind of like what was the past history. And I thought, since none of us here, sitting up here right now, were part of this process back in 2015, in case anyone has any interest, if you can go on your laptop, you could go on to the S drive, and all of these dates that on page 53 of your packet that Amy was so kind to go ahead and summarize, you can go to your S drive, you can look up those meetings, you can read the minutes, you can see the packet. If you want to be, have a nerd alert and learn all that stuff and dive yourself into that, you can. If you have no interest, you don't have to. But if you want to kind of know how they got to the decision of the city administrator position and why they went that way, you certainly can. I thought it wouldn't be a bad idea for those interested in kind of understanding how did we get to this point today. I also felt it was very important publicly, for at least a public decision, for us to be very transparent. I don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've ever had like a vote like all in favor of keeping the city administrator position as is, as far as the concept of it, versus a city manager going back to full-time mayor. I don't think we've ever had that vote. And I know it was very controversial back in 2015 when they went to this model. And I just thought, just for transparency's sakes, it wouldn't be a bad idea for us to review how we got here. Is this the way we want to continue? And then make that decision and have that vote. So that is what I would be possibly suggesting if you all want to buy into that. Because I know there are those out in the community who have some issues with, and I think they continue to have those issues. I personally, I 100% support the city administrator position. I think it's been very good for the city of Onalaska. I think it's very good for staff. And I know we're talking with a number of department heads, concept is very good also. But anyway, I'll turn it over to, thank you.
So I'm actually intrigued by the city manager position, but talking to people in the public, I think that they are expecting or wanting a city administrator. There could be some cost savings with that. I think it could work, but I think to represent the public, my view is that we would need to retain a city administrator, but
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree. Yeah, so on the road ahead, are you going to be looking at, I guess, do we want to form some kind of an ad hoc committee to make a proposal for any changes to any of the job descriptions or what have you to bring it forward? I don't know. I mean, you said you've kind of been meeting with the mayor. Have you had any discussions on your own on recommended roads ahead?
No, we just pretty much met, just kind of start the process. I know back in 2015, there was a 3-person committee that was appointed, and I believe, in fact, it says on here somewhere.
Yeah,
on
they had
page-
a subcommittee.
Yeah, on page 53, it shows. Oh, it was Alder Bertrand, Lori, who I think is on Police and Fire Commission now possibly.
That sounds correct, Lori.
And I can't
Olson.
remember who the 3rd person was.
So I think at this point, what we're looking for is a commitment to city administrator model.
Correct,
right?
yep.
So that-
And then
Is that all we're doing?
Yep, that is that's the guidance HR is looking for. And then HR can then move forward with the next steps, which would be looking at the job description with council the whole way. Of course, we would get council's approval at each step, just like when we go to fill any vacancy, we would go to the department head or immediate supervisor, in this case, the council, and work with the council at each step of the process. But we want to make sure that we're
Let's do that then.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that the Personnel Committee forwards to the Common Council a recommendation that we continue with the part-time mayor and full-time city administrator in the future.
Oh, second.
Motion by Alder Knott, seconded by Alder Smith to continue with the model of the full-time city administrator, part-time mayor model. Is there any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Oh, you're too late.
The mayor just,
Well, the mayor will make an exception.
but not for me. Okay.
No,
Thought it would be helpful for the record to say that I fully support that as well.
Okay.
great.
duly
So then,
noted. Now, any other discussion? Sabrina, I will make an exception for you. Okay. All those in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? No? No, that's not a no. There are no no's. All unanimous. Must be getting late.
It is.
Punchy.
Yes.
All right, so you have what you need.
and I'm going to do a final follow-up on that. So Amy will then go on to the next steps and prepare a timeline for everyone, and we'll begin on the job description. So you will all be in the know for the next steps on that. All right, next topic.
All right, so you want to tell us about bloodborne
Yes,
pathogen?
Another
policies?
exciting topic from HR. Yes, so the
Save the
policy.
best for last.
The policy of bloodborne pathogens was updated with the safety committee. We meet quarterly. The policy was revised in conjunction with our CIVMIC safety consultant, Matt Ackerman. And basically, it was an overhaul of this policy to simplify and clarify the procedures in the event of an exposure. We took the policy down from 22 pages to 10. The policy changes now bring us up to compliance. And heads up, we will be going forward and redoing the remainder of the safety policies because they all are a lot out of date. That's basically that on that. Any questions?
I didn't see a red line copy. Could you talk about what the changes were that brought this up to compliance?
Absolutely. So, yep. There, in the previous version was not a policy section to start it off. So we added a policy section at the beginning to be more in line with how all of our other policies are. We also numbered the policy 8.01, so it's just in continuation of all of our other policies and procedures. Now the safety policies will just follow along. The purpose section of this policy was clarified. It was very lengthy before. I have a copy of the red line version I can certainly provide. We added the program administration section so that it mirrors how we're doing policy changes going forward. So it'll be more uniform. Our exposure determination section was simplified and we listed specific departments instead of specific positions. So then if we added a position where they would be exposed to bloodborne pathogens, we wouldn't then need to change that policy. We just have the blanket of the departments listed. The basic bloodborne pathogen cleanup procedure was simplified. And it's actually the exact procedure that when Matt Ackerman comes and does presentations for Public Works, Police, Fire, it matches now the procedure that he recommends for us to follow. In the post-exposure evaluation and follow-up section, we defined specific duties that are for the supervisor as well as the duties of the employee that had the exposure incident. And then at the end of the policy, simplified that checklist so it makes it easier in the event of an exposure incident, the parts that need to be completed by the employee and then the follow-up that's needed by the supervisor. Just more nice laid out so it's easier to follow and follow the procedure. And that's basically the guts of what we changed.
Sure, and I think some alders might be interested, but maybe you just email alders what the red line policy was, but
I can
you
absolutely.
summed it up very well, but
Okay.
it's nice that we can see what
Sure.
the difference is.
I will make sure to include that when we,
Because I don't know if you can
Continue to
believe this,
revise
but
them.
I didn't have the bloodborne pathogen policy memorized, so.
yes, I can imagine. And it was so cumbersome. That was another reason we left it out of the packet. It was 22 pages and then adding all the red lines, it was like a 36-page document. So,
No, it makes sense.
will send that out.
So
and be sure to include it in the future policy revisions.
So I have just one question and possibly a follow-up. On page 58, C, basic bloodborne pathogen or OPIM cleanup procedure, sub 2, locate and open the basic bloodborne pathogen BPP kit. How would a staff member know where those are?
The staff members that would utilize that kit have likely attended the training from Matt Ackerman and discussed the bloodborne pathogen kit. I recently attended the training he provided to the Public Works facility, and he identified what the kit is. Part of this rolling out will be asking department heads to ensure that they have a kit on hand. So staff will be educated on this once the policy is approved and we send out our nice summary to employees. But yeah, the direction will come from supervisors to let the employees know where their kit is, but
We need to capture that in the policy of having some way to ensure that the people who need them know where they are, that the supervisor will brief them or what have, I don't know what the answer is. It's probably very simple.
oh, sure. And
Um,
I'm trying to think if it is noted. Because I think there in the policy somewhere, it does say for the supervisor to make sure
Oh,
that any supplies are on hand. I would just need a couple more minutes to find that here.
Might be under the supervisor's responsibility here on page 60.
It very well might be.
No, it could very well be in here and I missed it, but that's not under the supervisor's responsibility. But that would be maybe
A
one.
little bit lower on the employee training. No, I misspoke.
Which
But
page?
yes, I can be sure to.
Yeah, that's, I don't know, is that a waste? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just read that one piece. It's like, well, locate it, but where is it? So that's
Right.
all I was wondering. And maybe it's a non-problem.
Right, and maybe I can just make sure to highlight that when we're doing the next trainings on this program. I
It could-
feel like,
Doesn't have to be a hard solution. Yeah.
And then what happens if the supervisor is not available that day?
Yeah.
It's,
well, hopefully staff would have been directed to know the procedure, and I think there would have been a discussion prior, I think after we roll this new policy out, department heads are going to be educated, all the staff will be educated more, so it will be more of a common, each department has a BPP kit.
It'd kind of be along the same lines of other emergency equipment too, like AEDs. You get training for that, but do all the employees who receive the training know where all the AEDs are?
Right.
So.
Right, that's a good point. I can make sure that we at least highlight it when we're educating employees
Okay.
on the policy.
are you looking for acceptance of this now?
Yes, We are.
I'll make a motion that we approve the updated bloodborne pathogens policy with the understanding that during training, they will emphasize location of all the BPB kits, BBP kits, BBP kits.
Second.
Alder from. Motion from Alder Knott, seconded from Alder Smith. To approve the 8.01 bloodborne pathogen policy with caveats as stated. Any discussion? And again, I would just remind you to please email the change copy.
I will do that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It's approved. Then we'll go on to item 13B.
The final topic of discussion, as you can see in your packet, the memo that Amy prepared. This one is an exciting change for the city. Amy led an input group to update our performance evaluation program. This new form and process will facilitate more honest feedback between employees and their supervisors. The input group was a lot of people that are in this room, so if we need to reference any of them, we certainly could. And with the new performance evaluation process and form, it affects one little portion of the wage and salary policy. That little portion that's highlighted a couple pages later remained unchanged after the policy was revised last year. So we are asking just to change that one section of the policy. And that would reflect this new rating section that we have in our new updated performance evaluation form. A little background, previously, employees, if they fell below in any area below the standard, they would not be eligible for their step increase. With this new performance evaluation form and the overall rating section, an employee could now fall below in one of the 8 sections, but then as long as they exceeded in any one of the others, the overall weight would allow them to get that step increase. So that is the reason for the policy change.
I'll make a motion that we approve the proposed update to the wage and salary policy to include the revised performance evaluation form.
No second.
We have a motion from Alder Knott, seconded by Alder Smith, to approve the proposed updates to the wage and salary forms. Any discussion? Actually, I have a question. So if on the rating schedule, if people are rated on a scale from 1 to 5, so you got 2, 3, 3, 3, 3, 4, 5, and stuff like that, and that we're going to take the average, and in some cases that's not going to be an even integer.
Correct.
They round up, round down,
It's
or
no rounding. You were just going to take the whole number.
okay.
And so you would have to be above a 3 in order to get that performance step increase. And so this does simplify what was kind of a convoluted process before. And also, as you'll see, just looking at the employee review form, it makes it very clear what the city's expectation is. We expect all our employees to be at a 3. And so we obviously understand that people have weaknesses and that they can improve on those things, but our standard that we want to bring everybody to is a 3, and you need to have an overall rating of at least a 3.
So one thing I like about this is if there is an area that needs improvement and somebody were to get a 2, that doesn't just totally torpedo them, as long as they have like a 4 that can balance that out if there's something that they're particularly good at.
Correct. And to Lexi's point, I think that it makes it more likely that our employees will utilize the form correctly, that they will give honest feedback, that they'll rate appropriately, because right now you have this kind of thing hanging over your head where you're like, oh, they're kind of on the fence and maybe I could go down, but if I go down, it automatically makes them so that they don't get a step increase. And so then they tend to err on being actually like overly generous as
Sure.
opposed to this allows them to provide more honest feedback by taking an average system. And we do have some other systems built in there as far as if you do get a needs improvement, you know, that does require a work plan. It can be a very simple work plan, but we are going to require a work plan to get you up from that too.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
That is approved. Thank you, Lexi. Sorry that we made you stay so late.
I bet.
I don't believe that.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. The time is 8:21 PM. Is there any discussion? Nope. 8:21 PM. All right, all those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 We stand adjourned. Have a good evening.